Okay, so super simple lesson here, guys. So this last module is all about different kind of data analysis. So this first lesson we're going to look at is making sure that as we are collecting data, when we are trying to do any kind of statistics, that the data that we collect is good, and that the data that we collect is useful. So the first thing we're going to look at is analyzing if survey techniques are random or non-random. So essentially what you want to be looking for random versus non-random is will the way we are selecting people to take our survey, or specifically who we are selecting to take our survey, will either of those things affect the survey results in any way, shape, or form? Or are we purely just picking people so that there's no effect on our survey results? So that's kind of what we want to think about. So let's just read through these 4 examples and see what we think. So the first one says, to determine the number of hours people exercise during a week, researchers used random digit dialing to call 1,500 people. So using random digit dialing, they're going to call 1,500 people. All of those people are completely random, right? And there is in no way, shape, or form that just dialing phone numbers, these researchers are going to be able to sway the surveys either way. So we would call this random. Okay. All right, let's look at B. It says, to determine the most popular food choice at school, you survey all of your friends at lunch tables around you. Okay, so again, we want to think, does the way that we survey, or specifically who we pick for our survey, sway the results? I would argue that since you are surveying all of your friends at lunch tables around you, generally friend groups eat the same way, have similar fashion. So if you're ever asking like a fashion question or a food question or any kind of preference question, it's questionable when you start polling people that are friends with each other. That's when it becomes non-random, because it's likely that our survey will be swayed by that one individual group rather than having, lots of different people. So we would call this non-random. Okay, maybe a good way to actually get a good random survey to determine the most popular food choice at school. Maybe you survey 2 people from every table in the lunchroom, or you survey every 5th student that enters the cafeteria. Different things like that. So that would be random. All right, let's look at C and D. So C says, to determine how much money college students spend on clothes each semester, a researcher surveys 450 college students as they leave the university library. So anytime they have locations on these questions, I always want to make sure and pay attention to that. So would surveying people leaving the library affect the kind of answer I would get on spending money on clothes? The answer here, I would say, is no. There are lots of different types of people that go to the library, so surveying outside the library about the cost of clothes is not really going to change that, so I would call that one random. And then D, it says, to determine the most popular restaurant in Hamilton Town Center, you stand outside of Qdoba and survey every 5 customers coming out. So again, it gives us a location. We look at Qdoba, so standing outside of Qdoba, would that sway the results if you're asking what their favorite restaurant is? And I would argue yes, right? If you're surveying people coming out of Qdoba, you have a higher likelihood of people saying that they like Qdoba the most. So this one would be non-random. Okay, so that's looking at survey techniques. Let's flip over to the back and look at questions. So on the back, rather than looking at if a survey technique is random or non-random, we're going to look at, is a question that I use in my survey bias or fair? So very similarly to the front, we are looking for wording in our problem or in our question that would cause people to select or answer in a certain way. So on A, it says, does eating nutritious whole grain food improve your health? Okay. So the word that I have a problem with in this statement is nutritious. I'm okay with whole grain because it's asking specifically about whole grain foods. But if you're asking me if something is improving my health and you say in the question nutritious, that's going to sway people to answer a certain way. So this would be a bias question. Okay? So if I was trying to create this into a fair question, I would just very simply say, does eating whole grain foods improve your health? And that would now be a fair question. Okay? B says, do you ever attempt the dangerous activity of texting while driving? So again, I'm looking, is there any wording in here that would cause me to say yes or no? And I think that in the question, saying that it's a dangerous activity would sway people to say, no, I don't do that. So again, this would be a bias question. Okay? If I took out dangerous, then it would say, do you ever attempt the activity of texting while driving? That would be a fair question, because then people would not be inclined to say yes or no. C, it says, how many hours do you sleep each night? There's nothing biased about that question, right? It's a nice, straightforward question that is fair. And then D says, how can the mayor of your city improve his or her public image? Again, it doesn't bash the mayor. Everybody can always improve their public image, no matter how good or bad they are. So it's just a very simple question. How do you think they can do it? Okay. So that's another fair question. Maybe if I wanted to make C and D bias, I don't ever want to do that, but if I wanted to make C bias, I could say, do you sleep more than 7 hours a night like you should or not? That would be bias, right? And D, I could say, I think that the mayor should, let's see, what could I say? I think that the mayor should focus on improving the parks in our city. Don't you think that? So if you somehow put your opinion in there and then ask people to agree with you, that is also making it bias. Okay, so those are just some examples of things to look out for.